I have a flight today, so I'm just gonna keep walking around packing, but I'm here. I'm in the meeting though.
Great, amazing. Listen
Uh,
up.
my
Oh,
my bird is here for the company.
I I I can see that. I love it. All right. So basically, today is about, when I met Sarah, I had a really strong idea of my brand and knew exactly kind of what I wanted, but it took me a lot of years to get there. And I think that had I many, many years ago understood that branding and copy are like completely best friends, I think I would have saved myself a lot of kind of like struggles with my messaging. And when I met Sarah, I was a little bit nervous because I was like, well, how the heck is she going to talk in my brand? Like, is this really going to work? And then when I got the copy back for our first project together, I was pretty amazed. I had very few edits and I was like, oh, this is so amazing. And so it sort of also educated me further as a business owner around another thing that I can outsource safely and still be really authentic in my messaging to my audience in all of the ways that I'm presenting my business right now. So the way I kind of think, I'm keeping the side open. The way I kind of think about what we're going to talk about today is like everyone on this call wants their business to stand out, basically. Like we all want to have someone think about our business and then have a feeling and kind of a flavor to it, right? There's going to be a way different vibe for one brand than another. And they can both be wildly successful. And that's why, because they stand out, right? So essentially, we want our people that are viewing our work, that are looking at our website or new offers, new funnels, whatever you're working on, we want them to feel a specific way. And so I think ultimately, like, I think of branding as like an experience we design for our potential clients, and that's where so much starts to get lost. Like we're like, oh, but what colors, what this and that. Well, really, it's all comes down to messaging, and so much of it's our words and our copy. And I think that that's something that like gets lost in translation because we're all artists and we lean towards the design elements more when they really have to work together. So today I'm going to basically be like asking Sarah questions based on what all of you have been asking me and just like some topics that have consistently kind of been coming up so that this will be like a really comprehensive kind of lesson for you guys about your own copy on your website and your offers. Some of you are launching high ticket, like Candace right now, you have like tons of copy. That's amazing in your new offer. And I think today will be really fun to think about, okay, wow, I haven't done that, or I am doing that, and maybe demystify parts of copywriting as well. So um, basically, Sarah is the owner of Quotable Copy. And not only have I worked with her personally in my business, I've been following her for a really, really long time. And she also, after I got to know her a little bit more, like has worked with some big names in the photography industry. And so she's also actually worked with a lot of photographers. And that's why I think today will be so powerful for you guys, because there's a difference between someone who writes copy for like a tech company and copy for a brand photographer, right? So I'm essentially going to have Sarah introduce herself, talk a little bit about her business, and then we're going to roll through some awesome questions that are kind of geared to supporting you guys, like being a mini lesson here. And then we're doing just like a live Q&A all together at the end and just going to have a conversation about it. So I'm going to let Sarah take over.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks for the intro, Katie. And all the feelings are mutual. Like I love working with photographers because as I'll talk about, like I think, two of the main elements of your brand are visual and then the messaging part. And I've got the messaging part, you guys have the visual part. So it's fun to be able to, benefit each other. Um, do you I'd love to know, just based on, who's on this call, are you guys like what types of photography are we talking about today? Or do we have like a wide range? Are we more branding photographers, wedding photographers? I just want to make sure that I am speaking to the right audience.
My main
Hi.
focus is branding, and I also shoot boudoir, but I call it essence.
Cool.
Hi, I'm Harry. I focus on weddings, elopements, and couples.
Okay, great. Now, I don't know if Christina and Tyrone are listening, but sounds like even just between the two of you two, there's a wide range.
Yeah, and Christina is weddings, family, and like newborn. So it's like pretty wide, but I'd say
Okay.
two big niches are we've got brand photographers, brand and portrait, and like
Mhm.
family. So
Yep.
two
Okay.
big pillars, yeah.
Perfect. Good. Just wanted to make sure it wasn't like one big niche that that I was ignoring altogether. Cool. Anyway, as Katie said, I am Sarah. I'm the founder and what I call editor-in-chief of a copywriting studio called Quotable Copy. And we focus on conversion-focused copywriting in the online world. So yeah, specifically for creative entrepreneurs such as yourselves. Like Katie said, I work with a ton of photographers. You guys are kind of like my bread and butter. So really happy to be here with you today. And please do ask, any questions specific to your business, because I want this to be super helpful to you. But yeah, essentially, I don't want to go too deep into my own stuff because, you're here to be educated and inspired. But essentially, we have three main services. We focus on brand and website copy. So, like what we're talking about today, starting with, like your overall brand messaging strategy, as well as, how that is infused on your website copy, as well as, we have like a monthly subscription service kind of for like small one-off copywriting projects that you have throughout the month. As well as VIP days, which are a little bit of a catch-all. So we can kind of get done anything that you need during that day, as specifically as it relates to copywriting in like more of like the digital marketing sphere. So yeah, again, talking website copy, email copy, even like some Instagram captions, ad copy, things like that. But yeah, we'll get into all that, I think, a little bit later.
All right. Okay. So the first question that we're going to talk about today is broad, but Sarah's going to kill it. Basically, it's as a copywriter, can you tell us more about how branding and copy overlap in creative businesses and photography businesses?
Yeah. So kind of like what I was talking about earlier, I kind of see branding as having, two main arms. And what a lot of us tend to think of is the visual element, like that's obviously the photography. That's the logos and the fonts and the colors. And like what you were saying, Katie, like you kind of design this experience for your clients. But the experience, as you also mentioned, goes so far beyond just the visual. And that's the messaging. And so that's not only like your marketing stuff, like what you might think of on Instagram or in an email that might be sent to your mass audience, but it's also the direct DMs that you're sending to those clients, and it's the emails that you're sending personally to them. So it's really any type of writing that you're doing, or even speaking in a way like a lot of times, like your speaking voice and what we call your brand voice, those are very similar and overlap a lot. And that's why one of the things I love doing with clients is, hopping on like a one-on-one call. We always do a kickoff call at the beginning of a project so I can like actually hear your voice, because that's what infuses into your writing voice too, and makes it sound really authentic. And I think one of the ways that I'm able to, like Katie was saying, like surprise clients sometimes in that, like, oh, I actually did understand, like what you sound like. And so you're not sounding disingenuous in, say, an email or an ad.
Love that.
Yeah. So I mean, I have like lots of different. I took some notes too, Katie. So I have like different thoughts that we could go into as far as like how branding and copywriting overlap.
Nice.
So yeah, I guess maybe a good place to start would be to just like define like what brand messaging and brand voice are. Because I think there is a lot of confusion in that. And I think that especially if you're following a lot of, creative entrepreneurs, people in this space, it does get brought up a lot, like those two different terms, brand voice, brand messaging, things like that. But frankly, even I, like years ago when I kind of got started in this specific field, I was a creative writer for many years. And then I got into digital marketing, worked with a bunch of agencies before kind of going off on my own. So when I kind of got into this world a little bit more myself, I even was like, okay, what are these terms?
Yeah,
So,
define them. I think that would be a really good recap.
cool. So basically how I define brand messaging as a whole is what separates you from those in your sphere, maybe even beyond that too. So it's like defining, have you guys heard the term like the USP in your business, like the unique selling point? So I think that's a super key place to start for any business, is to like narrow in on what makes me special, what makes me unique. And then from there, I think everything that you say about your business is kind of like drawn from that. So it's a very, very broad term.
Yeah.
It is, I think, honestly nebulous, like almost on purpose, because it's hard to pin down. Everyone's brand voice is different. I do actually have, and maybe I can drop this in the chat too, like a brand voice magazine that I actually created where, oops, chatting as guest. Okay, got it.
Yeah, and I think a main question I've gotten about brand voice from people in Momentum Method is like, I don't know what it is yet. I don't, or like, how do I figure out what does make me unique? Because we all have a little bit of imposter syndrome too, as photographers,
Totally.
comparing ourselves. I also just think social media is so intense in that way that it's impossible not to compare. So if someone comes to you and they're like, I don't know what sets me apart, like
Yeah.
what something that you respond with to them?
That's so good. And I love that you brought up imposter syndrome too, because also that's a tall order, right? Like to be unique, completely unique in your field. Like there are a lot of creative entrepreneurs, there are a lot of photographers, there are a lot of wedding photographers, there are a lot of wedding photographers in your area, like, so
Many photographers.
it's a big order to be unique. And so one thing I do want to do is take the pressure off of all of us to, come up with something, like to try and write about ourselves and our brands, or to have this brand overall that is so unlike anything that anyone has ever seen before, heard before. You don't have to, partly because I think that makes you sound a little bit inauthentic if you, are trying to stretch yourself to something that doesn't come naturally to you. So one of the things that I would initially start to tell clients who would come to me with that question or concern of, I don't know what my brand voice is, I don't know what makes me unique, is just that reassurance that it's okay. Like we can work on it, and B, you don't have to put so much pressure on yourself. But when I'm working one-on-one with a client, I do have a little bit of a process that I would follow in that sense. The first thing I would do, like when I'm working with a new client, is send them an onboarding form. I'm sure a lot of you guys have forms that you send your clients, to get to know their brand, especially if you're a branding photographer. You probably want to know, what makes their business unique, and how you can pull those visual elements out for them. I have something similar, which, kind of starts with some basic questions about your business, and your services and your clients, just kind of getting you in that mindset of like, okay, yeah, like I'm pulling myself back out of the business a little bit, and like trying to zoom out, remind myself why I'm in this business, and then kind of like diving back into some of the nitty-gritty questions about, like copy, like, like what do you want your voice to sound like? What do you want people to feel when they're reading your emails? Like when you're envisioning someone yeah, looking at your Instagram post, where are they? Are they on the couch in the living room while the kids play on the floor, or, and were you raising your hand, Katie?
Oh, I want to speak right after you
Yeah.
to piggyback, but keep going.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
I think what you're saying, like one thing that you mentioned was the form. I think that from someone who's hired you, it's more than that. You actually guided me through an experience I needed to be guided through to get out of my own head and my own obstacles in my business, because my brain is like 1,000 open tabs, like all of yours. And
Yeah.
Sarah had the reason we're here today is because I felt like you coached me. I felt guided through an experience, just like we do with our clients, guys. That's what we do. We also need help. And that's one thing, like, before we went on, I wanted to be like, yeah, she sent a form, but it was pretty long. And I was like, whoa, she's going to get to know me. She's serious. And I took a really long time to do it because I finally was like, someone's telling me what to do. Hallelujah. Like, as a business owner, how exhausting is it that we constantly have to be making decisions? It's exhausting. I get decision-making fatigue in my business because I'm like, I'm tired of coming up with, so I will say with copywriting, I love doing design. I love all the art. I'm an artist. But when you guided me through that experience, that's when it clicked for me that I needed help with my copy. Like, that I was so in my head with so much going on that it removed me from the like CEO seat, and it helped. And then I was like, oh, I'm on this like journey now. And so I just wanted to say, like, that was a really cool piece too. I didn't realize the value of hiring a copywriter was way beyond the finished product.
Oh, I love to hear that. Thanks for saying that. And I feel the same way. Like, again, I've worked with, brand photographers, and I've filled out forms from your end. And it's interesting to see, like the different types of questions that we'll ask each other, and like the elements that we want to pull out. But yeah, like there is something so refreshing about being able to do an exercise like that. Especially when, yeah, it's guided by someone who I think kind of knows what they're doing. And yeah, to kind of piggyback off that too, I think one of the things that I like to do is not just, send the form and then, skim through it and then kind of forget about it. We're going over it together on that kickoff call. And like I'm diving deep. Like I always have like a private notes document for each client where, like, as I'm going through their questionnaire, like I'm thinking about things like, oh, this would be a really good angle to play up, or I wonder if she could tell me more about this story from her history. And so then I have that, those notes and ideas and questions that we then go over on like a kickoff call. And that's where, sometimes people are more external processors, like they don't want to have to fill out a long form. And I always say, like when I send over that initial form, I'm like, your answers do not need to be polished. That is my job. Like, you just need to get the info there so that I know what to be working with. And then, yeah, we'll go over, any questions or concerns on that call. And like you said, my intent is to kind of like guide the client through that. And then also reassure them that it's like, they don't have to be responsible for this right now. That's what they've hired me to do. Like we're just doing the work so that I can, start to understand what I see as your brand voice. And then I'll go back and write your copy, and then send it to you for review. And, then of course, like if there are revisions necessary, we go from there. But yeah, that's usually where clients are like, okay, this is what the brand voice is that I have. Like, I didn't even realize that I, had this, spunky tick to my writing, or that, like, I don't know, I'm a little bit more professional and buttoned up. And that's what clients appreciate about me, is my authority and my experience. And so just really playing up those elements that I know are going to, help their clients convert, because I'm able to see, like, yeah, different elements of personalities.
I'm gonna go a little bit off just because of who's on the call today. So I know, like, most of us are all sitting here like, God, copy is just, there's a lot of copy. We have marketing copy, we have our website copy. Sarah also used to be like focused on website design. So tell us, like like you do a wide variety of copywriting. You do a wide variety of copywriting for photographers. So like,
Mhm.
what are sort of the pillars of copy that all of us in a perfect world, I don't want anyone to stress out, but all of us should sort of be mindful of, like, what are the tiers of copywriting that like, because sometimes copy, I don't know, for me, it's very broad.
Totally.
Got Instagram, I've got sales pages, we've got funnels, we've got marketing copy, then we've got our bio. So tell me a little more, or us
Yeah.
a little more about that.
Yeah. Great question. Because it is broad. And like I was saying earlier, you could even define copy, as minute as a DM, so
Mhm.
I'm not trying to overwhelm people by like how much work there is to
It is.
do.
Every
But
little thing matters, like how I use ManyChat and that's automated DMs to people. I don't want it to sound, I want it to sound like me and make them feel like, oh, this is nice. Like she's really
Yes.
open or whatever. I don't want it to sound like a robot.
Totally, totally. And that's where, maybe the first place I'll start is, the place I would recommend any client starts, is with, kind of like a brand messaging guide. And I create these for some clients. By no means is this necessary. Like I don't want you to think like, oh my gosh, like now that's a whole other thing I have to create for my business. But it can be super helpful if, like you said, Katie, like you've got all these ideas of, oh my gosh, like I'm overwhelmed at the thought of even updating my Instagram bio. A guide like that can help you define, in my experience, the way I, do it for clients is we go into the why, the who, the what, and the how. So we're starting with the why, with like your overall business mission, your values, your vision for the future. So you kind of like we were saying earlier, just like resetting, zooming out, being like, okay, yeah, what am I about? Why am I doing this? And yeah, that's kind of where maybe like a bio can kind of come into play, so that when someone asks you to come on their podcast, you have a bio ready that you can just copy and paste. Then after that, like we get into the who, so getting into your audience, defining your. I'm sure you guys have sometimes done like customer avatar, client avatar exercises. Really just pinpointing who you're talking to, because that is going to be key in defining your brand voice. Because it's not only just what you want to sound like, selfishly or naturally, but it's what your clients will connect with.
Right.
And then getting into the what. So talking about like some of those specific nitty gritty things I like to provide my clients. I always tailor this to like what they like. For instance, if Instagram is their social media platform of choice, I'll create like actual like, sample captions or a bio that they can just plug and play. Otherwise, we get into other sample marketing copy, like even like call to action button copy on your website, some of that nitty gritty stuff.
Yeah.
So I mean, I could go into every little element of what I include in the brand messaging guide, but that I feel like is like a really good place to start if you're just like I need some help. Now moving beyond that, website copy I would say is like, your bread and butter as a photographer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's wild. It really is. And I'm curious because you do conversion copywriting, but in my opinion, when I hear that, I'm like, is it going to be salesy or this and that? Can you speak a little bit? Because I talk about this a lot in the course, but I want to talk about it here in how it relates to your guys' copywriting. Like how you speak, the idea of pain points and solving people's problems in your copy. Basically, like how we bring up pain points in our copy. And as the photographer, how we also say in our copy, like, that's why I'm here. I think that is getting lost. I just think that gets lost in our industry because people are like, well, they're hiring me to shoot their wedding. What's the pain point? And I'm like, there's a lot of pain points, like insecurity, body image, whatever it is. Brand photographers, we really get a lot of that too, because we're usually hired to photograph like conversion type of imagery, right? So can you speak to how you integrate the idea of knowing your audience and knowing their pain points and how to like that kind of vibe.
Yes. Oh, that's so good. You're right, because I think the photography industry, it's hard because it is so visual. I think it's easy to fall under that mindset of thinking, oh, well, as long as they see, my aesthetic, that's all that they are really going to care about, and then they're going to book. But as you guys know, it's harder than that, especially as the market becomes more saturated, and you do need to find those ways to stand out. And yeah, speaking to your audience's pain points and or desires, usually our goal on a website is to do both. And when I'm sending over website copy to clients, like with every section I have, I always start with like a little goal of that section. And like usually at the top, it's to grab people's attention. And then, like we're kind of, I almost view it as like a funnel where we're starting really high level. We're thinking about like, their emotional state. So just really trying to put yourself in that client's shoes of like, like, are they coming from more of a place of, like you said, insecurity or doubt or fear? In which case, yes, we would be talking more about like speaking toward their pain points, or maybe they are really like aspirational. Maybe in like more of the luxury industry, they're really wanting to see how they can, see themselves in these brides' shoes, or something like that. And then we kind of like, as the page goes on, we kind of get into more of the nitty gritty logistical details. But yeah, I love that you said that, because I think the temptation is to lead almost a little bit too much with imagery and not even consider the messaging part of it. When in reality, that's what the brides and grooms or business owners or whoever your ideal client is, that's what they're really coming to your website to see. Especially in the photography industry, I think maybe a lot of times clients will come to your website after already having seen samples of your work a little bit. Like they have an idea, like maybe they came from Instagram or whatever. So really they're coming to your website to learn more, like, okay, what makes this photographer different? It's not just pricing that they care about, it's the process. Are they going to make me feel comfortable on the day of the shoot? And like, can I really jive with them? Does this seem like a friend that I could work with? So copy is really what helps you do all that.
Exactly. And to that point, I love how you were talking about designing a page. And one of the lessons in Momentum Method is the anatomy of a high converting homepage, because there are so many parts of that. So much more of your homepage is about the copy. Yes, a few stunner images, but I love what you said about kind of a funnel, like targeting all their emotions, what their pain points are, what they actually want, and then having the body of a page be kind of like more about the details, the actual offer itself. And then I kind of like to go in after I've presented an offer, whether it's like brand photography, wedding photography, or like being for Momentum Method, right? You guys, it all has the same formula where after I like present an offer to people, I then like to really integrate like the transformation. So whatever the offer is that you're offering them, then have them go into the future, like future pace forward of like, whoa, what if I had a year's worth of content of brand photography and like didn't have to be stressed out about what I'm posting, what I'm doing, whatever your offer is. And so I think that what it comes back to now is we're talking about the photography industry in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. Like all of it was about the final product, your final photos, this. Now, if you guys, I'm sure have noticed this, but like it is critical on your websites and in your branding to create an experience for people. That's what's going to sell and convert. And that's where pairing our images and our brand with really, really, really good copy. And good copy might sound like you're just talking. Good copy might be like, grab a cup of tea, let's chat, like whoever you are, whatever you're. And I kind of want to, I hate talking about like money and sales, but at the end of the day, we are selling something. We are not selling a digital pin code and a final gallery. We're selling an experience. And that's why these long form pages with photos and copy and all of these parts of the brand work we're doing they're going to lead that person to essentially click and get into your world. And that's like the whole goal of this. It doesn't mean, and one thing I've noticed, I'm also a really big dork. I track my analytics like a lot. When like looking at the bounce rate on pages and stuff like that, like I'm such a dork. But when I rebranded for my brand business, I did notice, about 50% bounce rate was super fast. People were clicking on my website and piecing out. And I hired a copywriter, by the way, for support with this stuff. And there was a lot of people that stayed on for 290 seconds. And that's a really long time on a website. Like we all know that like a lot of times you just go, you're like, and you click out. So even if someone doesn't convert, think about the copy, the long form. You want them to have CTAs all throughout your offer. So they're at the top of your page, they're feeling emotional. Some people might click right then, but some people might scroll all the way down, think about it, leave, come back. But my point is, with this copy, you want to insert places for them to take action all throughout that. And one way that I think that is also not spoken about in our industry is like everyone's call to action buttons say like, contact me, or like contact form or something. It's like, how can you just think like as a photographer, how can you zhuzh that up? Like let's connect, say hello, we'd love to hear from you. Like just speaking to your audience. I think Candace, I'm going to use you as an example. Do you mind? She has an offer right now with a very clear ICA, a very clear ideal customer. And I feel like you could even have your copy be how you speak, because you're speaking to like a female friend almost that would come into your world. And I think that you're an incredible writer and really good at that. But I think that's something that gets really lost. And why I wanted to have Sarah today, of just like, good copy doesn't mean an essay from college. Like
Right.
great copy is about connecting with your audience, the
Yeah.
audience you want,
Mhm. I love that you mentioned that on CTAs, because that's something I talk about sometimes. It's called micro copy, where you have those really little tiny snippets of copy, like a call to action button, where instead of learn more, can you say something that's a little bit more unique, more in your brand voice, more connecting with your clients? Like, and that's one of my favorite challenges, is finding those little tiny places. Even, yeah, like on your form fields, like instead of just message : can you say something fun, like, or if fun is not your brand voice, something, more along the, like, whatever it is that your voice is. But just, yeah, finding all those little opportunities, because those are what, like actually kind of stick in people's minds, of like, oh, that's kind of creative. Like, oh, I didn't think about that.
Yeah. When
Yeah.
I was recently rebranding, I had to do a lot of these exercises myself for the first time in a while. And I realized that I fall very much in the middle. You have your like hot pink, like, yes, girl, like over the top, like, whoa, you're really, and then you have the kind of buttoned up. And I think I fall somewhere in the middle and have to be careful of like how to use exclamation points or how to use the word, whatever. But it was a good exercise for me to do in the present moment, because I also forget. It's easy to lean heavily on our visuals naturally. This is I'm really happy we touched on that. So, okay. So, and then I have one last question before our last question. Sorry. What I just for everyone here, like we've got our bio, we've got our website. Would you call, like, if someone had an offer, say it was a long form page for a brand photographer or a long form page for a wedding photographer or portraits, would you define the copy on that page just blanket website copy, or would that be kind of more sales copy? What is that?
Yeah. Thanks for getting back to that, because you asked a question about like, what are all the different types of copy? And I basically only mentioned website copy. So yeah, there are plenty of other, subsets that we could get into. But yes, I would say that, like I kind of define almost two different categories as far as like what is shown on your website. And website copy, I tend to think of as like kind of your evergreen, like the pages that are always listed in your main navigation. That would be, like typically, like your home, about, services, maybe of separate landing pages for each, specialty that you have, but contact, those types of pages. But yes, with photographers, like, I would almost consider an investment guide, like if you happen to have maybe like, especially a private one that clients have to request first and then you send to them. That's typically kind of a longer form, quote unquote, sales page that I would call it. And, or maybe you're launching something like an offer, like momentum method, or, whatever, like a course, something along those lines. Yeah, I would define those a little bit differently in more of that sales page category, and have a little bit of a different structure that, is a little bit more, I mean, everything's conversion focused, right? Like, but an about page is going to naturally naturally have a different structure than, say, a long form sales page.
Love it. Which brings me, I didn't know we were going to go this route, but in the back end of the program, guys, when I go over what to include in your pricing folio, like every page is going to tell you what you'll have a very clear idea of what copy you need to come up with. Sarah, would you say when someone is doing DIY copy that they should start by, because I know that I've shown you module 2 and momentum method is all about brand identity, brand voice, brand vision. Would you recommend that just be on like a Google Doc, like how someone kind of gets started? What do you recommend?
Getting started with defining their brand voice, or
overall, getting that, if someone wants to, for the now, DIY their evergreen website copy,
yes.
Would you recommend they start with, because I have a full brand, like I teach it all in the course, but what do you recommend they do to kind of get going? Because it's a big undertaking.
Good question. Okay, super good question. I would say it partly depends on what your longer term strategy is, and something I always like to ask clients, as we're working together, if I'm writing their website copy, I'm like, are you going to be implementing this, or do you have a designer who's going to be implementing this? Because if it's a designer who's creating something from scratch, or at least tweaking your current site design, we have a little bit more freedom in what I write for them. Not that I don't still follow like a strategic format when it's you yourself implementing the design, but I'm a lot more cognizant of like, okay, this photographer or client does not have the time to invest into designing a whole new page or section. So I try to be very like considerate of who is actually implementing the design. So I would say if you're DIYing the copy and the design, have that in the back of your mind, as far as not only when I revise this copy, I'm going to have to implement it. So be thinking kind of what you want to create live on the site. But that said, yes, I would recommend always writing your copy separately from designing it live in the site, because I have tried to do that even myself, and it's like you end up then trying to squeeze the copy into the design rather than the other way around. And I think almost every conversion focused entrepreneur that I know would agree that copy comes first and then the design. So yeah, I would start with a Word document. I try and format it so that like it's very obvious what's the big heading and what goes where. Like I use tables to denote different columns that I would recommend, like if something's supposed to be like a 3-column format. But yeah, I would start there. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah. Basically, don't start on your website, start on a Google document. That way you can share it. You can share it with me. Like we can have, because if there's one thing I've learned from Sarah, it's that it's not that you guys can't do it. We just sometimes need help and someone to guide us through this process. There's an accountability piece there too, of just like, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to have it done by June 10th or whatever, and that's what I mean by getting something started. And then we have, I like to think of it as you just have like it's like your vision board for your brand kind of all in one place. Right. Okay. My last question. as a copywriter, how do you make sure that the copy and content sounds authentic to the brand voice of your clients? What do you do if a client, oh, we kind of went over this. What do you do if a client comes to you and they're not sure about what their brand voice is and what their brand personality actually is? And can you give us an example? And maybe since we kind of went over so much of that, you can just like take and leave what you want.
Yeah, no, you're right. We did kind of cover it. So yeah,
I
I don't
jumped
want
around, sorry.
I jumped around. Trust me, I'm always jumping all over the place. But yeah, I would say yeah, just kind of starting again with those high level questions of like, let's talk about your business. Because those are usually easier questions to answer, right? Like I mean, it takes a little while sometimes to get back in that mindset of why did I, go into this, and what do I really care about, and who am I trying to serve? But I think by starting high level, and then yeah, just me kind of like pulling the threads, right? Like both in the, like a form I would send over to a client, or if we're just on a discovery call or whatever, just like asking those follow-up questions, and really just trying to get to like the story behind your brand too. That's something we haven't necessarily talked about a ton, but like storytelling is huge. Like, I mean, that really is what's going to set your brand apart. Like, not just in the sense of like, oh, I've been taking photographs since I was a little boy or girl, and like that. Those things can be interesting, but it's how you relate your backstory to your client's backstory, and using those like specific, concrete details. That's what I love, and so sometimes, Katie has experienced this too, where I sometimes it's even like, some painful stories in your background that like I don't know, that you don't know are going to connect with your clients, but they really ultimately do. And so I think, yeah, just reminding you of why you got into the business, and how you can help your clients through similar struggles and similar desires.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't even think of that. Yeah, sometimes in your storytelling, guys, does not have to be positive, because that's not maybe it's not all, it's some of it is going to be like a pain point you experienced and why you can offer a different solution. Good point. I didn't think about it that way.
Yeah.
What is and then what is like, can you give us an example of like a recent, and then we're going to go into Q&A, but like, what's a current project you're working on right now? You can be like, just for a photographer, like something that's super just on your mind, right?
Yeah. Well, one thing I guess I didn't mention at the beginning of this call that I probably should is I am pregnant. I'm 38 weeks pregnant, so I'm going on maternity leave in like a week and a half. So my current project slate is a little bit light as I'm trying to like, back off. But yeah, I've been working on some, previously to this, I was working on like a launch for a photographer who had they went through the whole, webinar, through the course launch, experience. And I was kind of helping. I did a bonus module with them, as well as helping with their like actual launch copy as well. So that was kind of like a fun project to be involved in, because it's the first time they were launching this course and this webinar. And so we were able to do a lot of like trial and error. And to be honest, I haven't even fully seen the back end of how it has converted, but I know that they've been blown away by the numbers. So that's been really fun. But yeah, I always love working on launch copy, because it's just like, it's almost exhilarating, whereas, a copy or a project that's, more branded website copy for like a brand launch is also very exciting. The stakes don't always feel as high. So there's a little bit of a rush that I get, helping a photographer or anyone go through a launch.
Copywriter. I love that you use the words exhilarating.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys are like, real fun.
I think it's incredible. All right. I would love people to hop off mute. I think that like any questions, this is a great time. there's no wrong question. Does anyone want to check in? Oh, come on. Someone has a question.
I checked out your page. Love the thank you copy. I want to model something like that. So from that perspective, what's a good place to start to like close the deal, I guess?
Good question.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more. So do you mean you like downloaded a resource and then you got redirected to the thank you page?
Yeah.
Got it. And then your question is like, how do you
Where do you start with that? I don't have a thank you page. So
yeah, no, that's a really good question. And there's even debate. I mean, if you had all the time in the world and a team, you could create a separate thank you page for each resource that you have, and that gets a little bit difficult to say the least. But yes, my strategy is to have one thank you page for all of my freebies, which you can kind of tell from the page. It's a little bit more generic in the sense that it says, yeah, like thanks for downloading this resource. There are multiple resources that I have. But yeah, I think a thank you page is a really underrated strategy because often I don't know what services you guys might be using for lead generation, whether that's like Flowdesk or ConvertKit or whatever. Usually they'll have like a built-in like thank you message that you can just show on the same screen that just says thanks, check your email for your resource or whatever, which is totally fine, especially if you're on a time crunch. Often published is better than perfect, but if you do have the time to create a separate landing page for that thank you page, it's a really good way to set expectations with your clients, direct them to other resources that you might have that are relevant, keep them engaged with your copy and your website. Like Katie was saying, like the more you can keep people on your site and engaging with your content, the better. So yeah, I would always recommend, as far as structure goes, just starting with that big thank you, like get them excited to use the resource, make sure they know what the next steps are, like whether it's coming straight to their inbox. Sometimes with like a free resource, it'll accidentally get sent to like spam or whatever. So it's always a good idea to say like, make sure to check your spam or email us if you have any questions, and then just guide them farther down the path. Like Katie was also saying earlier, one of the biggest things like you can do on your website especially, but anywhere that you're writing copy, is just always provide that next step. And it doesn't always have to be the step of like, book a call with me, book my actual service. It can be something like in between. It can be just check out this other relevant resource, or learn more about X. I don't know if that helps answer your question.
Yeah, absolutely. So I use Flowdesk as well, and I'm assuming there's a way to link to your website from the template. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So you can still have a default like post submit thank you message, but it's somewhere in the back end. I would have to pull up the actual like a form to see. But yes, and maybe I can just try and do that live. But yes, there is a place where instead of the post submit button, you can redirect to any URL. And so then you just put in whatever URL that you created.
And Candace, I use Flowdesk too. I think it would be brilliant if you had your Flowdesk have a thank you copy and redirect to your offer too, keeping people engaged. I wanted to share one other piece about the thank you copy. So in Flowdesk, in ConvertKit, anywhere, but essentially someone downloads your freebie and they get that thank you copy, right? From there, you can have Flowdesk trigger that email to go into a new segment that starts what's called a nurture sequence. And I do not teach this in Momentum Method, so I'm just going to briefly say a welcome or nurture sequence is essentially a series of copy that's automated from a lead magnet. And it's how you keep them in your world. And so what I was thinking, sorry, I keep using you as an example. I just reviewed her first like big offer. So I'm like, it's in my brain. But essentially when someone opts in for my freebie on my branding website, a pop-up goes, it says, does your brand need a facelift? They download a brand identity guide that essentially leaves them hanging. It only gives them 2 exercises to do out of like 10. But when they book a brand session with me, we do all 10. But they download that resource, they get the thank you email, and then their email dumps into a nurture sequence. And a week later, they get an email digesting their brand voice. Then a week later. So I know it seems like a lot of work now, but remember this, guys, when you follow module 3, I have to bring this back to the course really quick. If you go through module 3 and all the brand content and do all of this can be recycled copy. Like all of this can sort of be like a segment from your website rewritten in an email format. So more the reason I think my main messaging to everybody here is like, let's really focus on our websites as our digital storefront. So, but yes, Candace, I'm happy to help you with Flowdesk like as well. Anyone else have questions?
Thank you. I love how proactive the bird is. Just want to say that.
I keep looking at the bird and I've wanted to laugh like so many times.
It's amazing.
Oh my God, it's too good. I've never had a bird on a Zoom call before.
What's the bird's name?
His name's Goku.
Loco, like
Oh.
crazy?
Goku.
Goko.
Goku buddy.
Does anyone else have any other questions?
Yeah. So last few weeks I've been like reflecting a bit, and I feel like my strength is in my communication and bringing out experience to clients. So how can I go about it, like showing it through words, like through copy and through my website, that I create an experience and, you know, people have fun with me, they laugh, and I've been networking a lot recently, and it made me feel good about myself too. Because my website, I just made it from ChatGPT, but I want to do a better job, you know. So
Yeah. I love that you're thinking about that. And that is such great feedback. One thing I would say for sure, if you aren't already doing this, is gathering testimonials. I love, featuring those. It's just like the perfect way. It's like a cheat, like as a copywriter to, or as a whoever you are, the entrepreneur, to just use your client's actual words. So if you can get them to, say whether that's in writing itself, or even better yet, in like a video testimonial, I would definitely encourage you to use that anywhere in your marketing. But yeah, as far as like your actual website too, just I think, I'd love to, if you want me to take a look to, this goes for any of you guys, if you want to email me after this and ask any follow-up questions, I'd be happy to do that. But yeah, I think the danger in using, like AI or ChatGPT is that you sometimes do lose some of that like unique personality. And it sounds like, like part of what sets you apart is your personality and your fun nature. So yeah, so I would just really want to make sure that is coming through. And that's where, something like brand messaging gets really difficult to define, because it's hard to put a finger on it until you see it or try it. But yeah, definitely focusing, I would say, like most of your copy on the experience that you provide. One thing I love to do as a writer is, starting especially headings with an action verb. So instead of saying something like, like Charleston photographer as like your header, like you're rephrasing it to like, what is the benefit that my clients can get out of this? And it could be something like, have the time of your life at your wedding. This is very off the cuff. It would be better than that. But like an action, like starting with an action verb, so that someone can be like, oh yeah, that's what I want to do, rather than just kind of noun phrases starting with action verbs.
Kind of something like attract and land your dream clients in San Francisco, California. Something like the action meets the location. That's really cool. I like that.
Right. Right. Yeah. And you still, I mean, especially if SEO is your goal, like still, like you said, including the location. And even if SEO is not your goal, it's still helpful to include your location because clients need to know that they're in the right place, literally. But yeah, yeah, pairing that keyword that you're trying to target with, yeah, more of a something like an actionable statement that speaks to, again, either their pain point or their desire.
I want to piggyback on that. I know we're almost up at time on what Harry just said. So Sarah, what do you think about this for this crew? Like, what about copy that's in list format to get started? Is that something you recommend or not? Like, ways we go above and beyond, semicolon, and like a bullet pointed list. That's always worked very well for me in my converting clients. What do you think on that for them?
Oh yeah, bullet points are huge. And again, they're a little bit of a cheat because especially if you're not very confident in your writing skills, it's a really good way to, yeah, start brainstorming maybe what makes you different. Like you said, like you can start with just that title of, yeah, like what sets us apart from other photographers in the area. And then yeah, just have a bulleted list. That is great both for you because it's easier, and B for the website or wherever this copy is appearing for the visitor, because they, trust me guys, people are skimming, they're reading your headlines, they're checking out the bullet points. If there's like bolded or italicized text, you're looking at those CTA buttons. So yeah, although it is still important to have paragraphs of text, especially for those people, like you were saying earlier, Katie, there are going to be people who are excited right away and click. There are going to be people who read every single word. So it is important to have all of it, but bearing in mind the skimmers, yes, for sure, starting with a bulleted list is great.
Okay, I love that for everybody here. If you feel inspired, again, I'm only saying this because it's worked really well for me, but like as the headline saying ways that I go above and beyond, or what sets us apart from the rest, semicolon, and then make a like 5-pointed list. That's just easy. It's kind of, okay. And if you want me to review it, I will, but I think that's kind of a fun way to get started today on just like getting you in the mindset for it. So
yeah. And then you can extrapolate. Sorry,
no,
I'm getting excited with that. Because then you can take any one of those points and repurpose it for other, like you could create a whole new section based on just one of those points. You could write a whole new social post based on just one of those points. Like that is one of the things I love to do. And another way I try and reassure clients who are not confident in their brand voice is like, okay, especially if say I'm writing this website copy for you, you can repurpose any of that for an email sequence, for a social media post, and you can even repurpose the same social post again months later, so like there's a lot of recycling you can do. But I think starting with a list like that gives you so much fodder to work with.
Lists, my favorite thing on the planet. Well, Sarah, this was so fun and amazing. I'm going to send the replay to everyone here and a transcription, if you want to revisit anything, guys. And I'll put this as an unlisted video on YouTube so that it's not in Zoom Cloud. So it's something you can revisit. I think we went over a lot for an hour. So I'll send that to you guys. And then it'll have in my follow-up email, Sarah's website and email if you guys just had specific questions. Sarah, thanks for taking the time to be with us. This was really awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. You guys are my people, even though I'm not one of you. I love being a part of your crew. So thanks for having me.
Great copy for you. Okay. All right, guys. We'll have a really good week. And thanks for being here. And I'll be in touch soon.
You want to say bye, Goku?
See you guys later.
Bye, Bernie.
See you.